You can log online right now and watch millions of people tear each other apart over the assigned outrage of the day. You sit there, separated by a screen, looking at the intense tribalism, the blind loyalty, and the sheer noise of it all. As an outside observer, it looks chaotic. But put yourself inside a highly charged crowd, surround yourself with thousands of chanting voices, or immerse yourself in a digital echo chamber for long enough, and your own sharp, independent logic begins to soften. The boundary between what you think and what the crowd feels simply dissolves. When intelligent individuals join a unified crowd, their intellect averages down. As the group forms, that high intelligence flattens out. Psychologist Gustave Le Bon observed an individual in a crowd descends several rungs on the ladder of civilization. Primitive instinct replaces complex logic. We live in an information environment built to assemble these crowds at an industrial scale. To survive a system designed to strip your individuality, you need to understand exactly how a crowd swallows a human mind. Le Bon's early diagnosis of group psychology isolated a very specific sequence of events. When a random collection of people becomes a psychological group, the conscious personality of every single member goes dark. This blackout begins with anonymity. Wrapped in the sheer numbers of a massive crowd, a person acquires a sudden sense of invincible power. At the exact same time, their sense of personal responsibility drops to zero. With the guardrails of responsibility gone, contagion activates. An emotion or a radical idea emerges in one corner of the group and rapidly infects everyone else. Individuals readily sacrifice their own personal interests to serve the collective urge of the mob. This contagion causes the crowd to reject objective truth. Nuance is boring, and hesitation is seen as weakness. The crowd demands absolute certainty and simple, extreme illusions that it can defend with violent passion. Le Bon perfectly described the symptoms, but decades later, Sigmund Freud dug into the actual mechanics of the disease. He wanted to find the biological exploit, the exact psychological flaw that allows this hypnotic contagion to take hold in the first place. Freud found that vulnerability in what psychoanalysis calls libido. While often associated with physical desire, Freud used the term to describe the intense, unconscious energy that drives us to form emotional ties with other people. We are terrified of isolation. We crave harmony with the herd. This evolutionary desperation to belong is the exploit. It serves as the psychological backdoor for every cult, every extreme political movement, and every instance of mass manipulation in human history. We can model the mind as a split geometric system to see how this hack works. At the bottom is your baseline self, your ego. Directly above it sits a brighter, distinct mechanism that Freud called the ego ideal. Your ego ideal is your personal conscience. It holds the moral standards you've built up over a lifetime. When you have an aggressive or unethical impulse, the ego ideal judges those signals and filters them out before you act on them. Inside a crowd, you willingly surrender that protection. The bright filter of your own conscience snaps off. In its place, a massive external symbol drops in and completely overrides your internal filter. You fill the empty space in your mind with the group's charismatic leader or its absolute, unquestionable ideology. With the group now functioning as your conscience, you feel zero guilt for your actions. If the leader commands it or the ideology demands it, any atrocity suddenly feels entirely justified. Freud traced this absolute submission back to our oldest ancestry. He called it the primal horde, a regression to an ancient, primitive state where an entire tribe lived in blind obedience to a single dominant chief. Marching soldiers illustrate Freud's theory applied to artificial groups. An army functions because every single individual has replaced their personal ego ideal with the exact same commander-in-chief. Their cohesion relies entirely on identical submission. Crowds become dangerous because they effectively delete the individual's internal moral compass, leaving behind an empty vessel waiting for an order. Modern algorithms, media structures, and geopolitical campaigns represent the architecture of mass suggestion functioning exactly as designed. Modern digital environments manufacture the contagion of the primal horde at scale. They actively weaponize your biological need to belong, using algorithmic pressure to force your individual logic to average down to the baseline of the mob. To insulate yourself against this, you have to actively guard your ego ideal. When you feel the intoxicating, warm pull of collective outrage, you must recognize it as a demand that you outsource your conscience. Blindly submitting to a charismatic movement is a primitive, hypnotic regression. Identifying this biological reflex as it occurs is the first step in breaking the spell. True independence is the active refusal to outsource your judgment to the crowd. It is the willingness to endure the discomfort of standing alone in a world meticulously engineered for conformity.